All right, everyone. Hi, this is Megan from Heartland. It is just at the half hour right now. We're going to give people just one more minute to jump on, make sure that everybody has a chance to log in for that, and then we will get started with the webinar. So you are in the right place, and we'll be with you in just a moment. Okay, well, we are going to get started. Hopefully a few more folks will join us, but thank you so much for joining us this evening for our special topics webinar. This is specifically designed for our juniors, but I think there's some really good information for our younger students as well, especially as they start thinking about the PSAT, the practice SAT test. I am joined by a couple of our coaches who are on. So Coach Amy is here, and she is a guru as it comes to a lot of these different things. So she's definitely going to be helping out with this. So it's kind of a short presentation tonight, but we know that this is something that is coming up for students and kind of like, what do I really need to do with my PSAT scores? What are the next steps? How do I utilize this? So we wanted to take really just a quick moment to be able to do that. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen and jump into our presentation. We will have time for questions and answers at the end. So either we'll be able to do that via the chat line. Coach Amy is staffing that for us right now. I also see we have another coach, Janelle, on. And then we'll also be able to, if you have questions for the group, you can unmute yourself and be able to ask that question at the end. So again, not super long tonight, so just wanted to take a chance to give you some much needed information. So again, this is really this is designed for our juniors, and then it's, or anyone else who's wondering what to do with their PSAT scores. So what we're going to focus on are these areas tonight. Really, when should I take the PSAT? This is a little bit farther. It's kind of a step backwards for folks who have already taken the PSAT. We totally get that. But if we have any freshmen or sophomores that are on and are maybe having that question, maybe some 8th graders, this is going to help with that. So we won't spend a ton of time on that. And then really, how do you use that PSAT score to determine when you take your first, second, or third SAT? What is the National Merit Scholarship? How do you utilize Khan Academy? How colleges start recruiting with those scores, and then how to utilize your SAT, your PSAT, to really help you determine what those requirements are for your schools of choice and how you can start making those decisions now once you've gotten that. So really, when to take the PSAT, and other fellow coaches who are on the webinar, if at any point in time you want to add anything, please feel free to jump in with that. So it does not need to be just the Megan show. So really, it's when to take the PSAT. It is offered yearly in high school. And it's designed, this is what I don't think people really talk about, is that it's designed to test junior year level knowledge. So you can take it in 9th grade and in 10th grade. But often what that does is we find as coaches that really just leads to stress in students. Oh, I didn't do well on this area. I'm never gonna get into a good college, or, kind of that stress spiral. Because there are things that you just simply haven't learned, that you haven't taken those classes, unless you are taking advanced level math classes or for whatever reason, as a younger underclass student, you are taking SAT prep courses, you just simply haven't learned this material. So it's not that you're not doing well. It's a combination of potentially that may play into it, but it's really more about that you just haven't been taught this material yet. So if you are thinking about taking this earlier than your, fall of your junior year, talk to your coach. Talk to them about why you want to take it, what benefit you think that's going to bring you. There are some classes, some AVID classes, some other kind of preparatory classes that you may be taking in high school, and they may be asking you to take it there as well. Again, that's going to fall into that exception category, but if there's really no prep that you're doing for this, taking this test earlier than your junior year, not a great idea for you from a coach's standpoint. It's really better to take it closer to when you'll take your SAT for all of the other reasons that we're going to get into tonight, really of how this PSAT, you can use it as it's designed to help you figure out what you need to do next for your SAT. So really utilizing, thinking about the calendar, moving from when we've taken our PSAT. So the PSAT, I don't have my dates in front of me, but you all who have taken it have already taken it. It was delivered or administered on, I believe, October 10th, and then 2 weeks later, somewhere in there. So you should be getting those scores back fairly shortly if you have not gotten those back yet. So there's several dates that are going to be available upcoming. Some of these are going to be in 2018. The majority that we're going to focus on is in 2019, but those are going to be coming up. Now, we have talked about this and kind of looked at all of the different dates that are available. What we have come up with and really what our recommendation is that the ideal date to take your first SAT test is going to be the March 9th date. That may look a little different, but these are really national dates that are out there. There may be something that were to happen and that type of thing, but we're really looking at this March 9th date. You're going to need to register by that February 8th date. The reason that this is an ideal date is because if you're, have gotten your PSAT scores back, you can start figuring out, okay, what does it seem like I'm going to, based on these scores, what do I think my SAT score is going to be? What test prep do I need to do? And we're going to get into that in a moment. And this gives you time to be able to do that. It also gives you time to be able to get your scores back to determine whether you need to take the test again a second time. And then, which then that next date of that June 1st would again be enough time to get your scores back, make a determination on how well you did based on the schools that you want to attend, based on what your goal was, and does it make sense for you to take it again? And if it does make sense for you to take it again, looking at what that test prep looks like and looking at that June 1st date. Really, so some of these other dates, and I know you all can read, but we want to give some context to this. That December 1st date, one is coming up really, really fast. You have to register by November 20th, which I believe is, it's next week. I can't remember. I don't know the day of the week that it is, but it is next week. So you would have to register by then. Oftentimes it's going to come into conflict with final exams. There's not going to have enough time to do any type of test prep, that type of thing. The other date that is available and obviously falls in between the March and the June date is that May 4th date. This often is going to come into conflict with your AP testing. So if you are in any AP classes, any advanced placement classes, you're going to want to be, and you're a junior, you're going to be wanting to study for these AP exam testing. And the test prep for your AP exams looks very, very different than your test prep for SAT. So this is really how we would suggest prioritizing when to take the SAT. Now, obviously, there's going to be some exceptions that come into that. If you're taking a SAT test prep class, it makes the most sense for you to take the SAT as close to the end of that test prep class as possible so you can get the most out of it. So that may mean the December 1st or the May 4th, that type of thing. But without any additional test prep that you're doing, if you're not in any specialized test prep, this is how we would prioritize choosing the date for your SAT. One thing we really want to point out is down here is that, and we're probably going to do a little bit more on SAT once that kind of hits in the spring, but something to think about as you're thinking about these multiple dates is that we really do not recommend taking the test more than 3 times. That really does start to send up a red flag, unless there's some extenuating circumstances that you'll be able to speak to. We suggest not taking it more than 3 times. So you'll just think about that as we start walking through what that test prep looks like. So, I actually forgot that I'd made this slide. So most of those things that I just said are actually on this slide as well. And so again, you're going to need to give yourself time to do that test prep based on your PSAT score. If you decide to enroll in a test prep course, if you decide not to, and then again, that PSAT score will help you determine what type of test prep that you need. Khan Academy. I know most of you, if you are working with any coach from Heartland, have gotten this as a resource. It is a free resource. You are able to upgrade for a charge. I don't remember what the charge is, but you are able to upcharge if you want to. But for the most part, it's really a free resource. And they start working with students. I have a first grader who is starting to work in Khan Academy, you know, for different areas. And so, but what we're really talking about is that it's a test prep for SAT. There is no test prep for the ACT on Khan Academy. But what you can do is once you set up your account in there, it's very easy. I walked through it, and if I can walk through something technological, you all can absolutely do it. And so you walk through and you say, okay, I've already taken my PSAT. You put your scores in, and it will start to generate a personalized test prep for you to help you start practicing in the areas that you need to get stronger in. It'll help you review questions that you missed, maybe figure out why, so you can start seeing the why behind that. So regardless of what those questions are, you'll be able to kind of figure out what that is. And it can help you to raise your scores on average 50 to 100 points per section. The main point about this that I want to say that we all want to make sure that you know is that you've got to put in the work. Simply having, and this is going to be true, and maybe it'll get old by the end of this webinar, but simply having an account, going in every once in a while, looking at it, that type of thing, that is not going to raise any points for you. You have to truly engage in it. It's much like engaging with your Heartland coach. If you are maybe reading the emails once in a while from one of us, you're not getting a lot out of that program. The same is going to be true for Khan Academy. So if you put your information in there and you work the program that they have given you, and you can take other practice tests that are in there to see how well your test prep is taking for you, but you've got to put in that work. So if you're thinking about test prep, so Khan Academy is a free resource. Another free resource that I don't have anywhere on this webinar is also and you can just find it. I found it easily in the App Store on any smartphone that you have, is the SAT test question of the day. So if you put that in, it's an app, and it'll start generating those to you on a regular basis. So that's another free resource that you can also use depending upon what your needs are. So really, when you're deciding whether to pay for SAT prep or not, and primarily when we're talking about paying for that, we're talking about enrolling in a test prep course. You're going to have some things local. There are some nationally that are going to have some local sites where you maybe are going to do an online one. You may work with a tutor. There's a lot of variations, but really some of the things to consider when deciding to pay for an SAT prep or not is really using your PSAT scores that you took in your junior year. Let's just say that you took your PSAT in the 9th grade and then you decide not to take it again for whatever reason. That's not a really great indicator of how you will perform on the SAT. So you're going to want to take it in fall of your junior year to really be able to get the most benefits out of it, of determining what type of test prep you're going to do, and also determining, it's not the whole factor, but it's a piece of the puzzle on what's the likelihood of being admitted to certain schools based on your scores. So when you're looking at your PSAT score from your fall of your junior year, how many points do you want to or need to raise your score? You may have a personal goal. You may be working with, you know, a teacher or someone who says, I think you should get X score. You're looking at, and we'll get into this in a minute, but you're looking at college and universities and what their average admittance scores are. If that's the score you need to hit, let's just say you're looking at a school that has a 1400 average SAT score and you scored maybe a 900 or 1000, that may be something that you are going to want to raise your scores a great deal, and that's where the pay for prep is going to be helpful for you. So you're going to want to look at, where do you want to go to school? So you've already been working with your coach on identifying what are the schools that have my majors and all of those pieces that go into college selection. But one of the pieces really is, what's the average SAT score to be admitted? So again, you're going to look at what your PSAT score is, and that, you know, is a really great indicator of how you'll perform on your SATs. If you need to raise your score more than 100 points a section, based on your PSAT score, we suggest, highly suggest looking at some of these very intense pay-for-service SAT test prep. You're also going to want to talk to your coach about some of these pieces. You know, what are your overall grades? What does your extracurriculars look like? You know, your resume, those types of pieces. And that really will help determine what weight your SAT score is going to be given. If I don't even have some great examples that are out there, but if your GPA is also really well below what that average, you know, what the school has on average, the SAT score may not be the piece that's going to put you over the edge. So we encourage you to have some of these conversations with your coach as well, on whether paying for SAT prep is going to be worth that, that extra cost. Give me 1 second, folks. I am going to jump out of here really quick, hopefully, so I can do this. We are going to mute folks. We are not having, okay, then we will go back to sharing. All right, thank you for that. You're also going to look at what classes that you're taking, specifically math. I know Coach Amy has some really good examples about that. Maybe I'm putting her on the spot, but she was walking me through some of these pieces yesterday about the types of classes, specifically the math classes and potentially the science classes, but really how that math class is going to affect, again, it goes back to that knowledge base. If you haven't been taught something, then getting test prepped on it may not, you know, help you raise that score. So again, we want you to really talk to your coach about, do we think that this is a good idea, a good use of resources, a good use of time? And again, you're going to need to remember that the student, not the parent, not the coach, not anyone else, but the student needs to put in the work. Whether it's pay for services or free resources, the student needs to really put in that work. And no resource can guarantee your score being raised. I can tell you that if something is telling you, we guarantee that your score will be raised, I would be a little wary of that, because it's not taking into a lot of factors. What knowledge base are you starting from? How much work are you going to put in? Those types of things. So they can't guarantee that your score is going to be raised, but what it can guarantee is that, you know, that you will get test prep out of that. So these are just some things to consider, again, based on your PSAT score. We want to talk about the National Merit Scholarship. I would encourage you to go to this website and check it out. This is the mission, is really to recognize and honor academically talented students in the U.S. It's a state-based program, and so the amount awarded and the amount of money awarded, as well as what the selection process looks like, is going to be different on a state-by-state basis. That's all outlined here on this website. The PSAT score that is a result of the test that is taken in the fall of your junior year determines the eligibility to qualify for this scholarship. So National Merit Scholar have the overall organization have access to all of the PSAT scores. When the states that come across the PSAT scores in their state that qualify for what they have set out for their qualifications, they will then contact that student and they will tell you what those next steps are. There's quite a bit of money that can be associated with this, so it's really something to think about. So I would encourage people to look at that. Oftentimes it's going to be our really top percentages, oftentimes close to a perfect score. Not always. Again, it's going to be state-based, but just kind of keep an eye out for that. So if you get any information on the National Merit Scholarship, or you get one, look into it. Definitely look into it. Don't just discard it, and definitely have a conversation with your coach about it as well. So a lot of times what's going to happen is after you've taken the PSAT, regardless of the year, but it's really going to make a difference in your junior year, you're going to start getting a lot of brochures, emails, mailers, invites, those types of things from different colleges and universities. It's important to know that there's a lot of schools that do pay for, that first bullet should say PSAT scores, but they pay for that, so they can start seeing what types of students are out there in the country, which types of students could they potentially recruit to be, to come to their campus. What we want to encourage you to do is not simply just throw those away. You may get things from schools that you have never heard of before. They may be in, smaller towns, maybe in your state, maybe farther away. But it's a really great opportunity to expand your list of schools, expand your horizons, start doing some of that research alongside your coach, but to say, oh, I didn't even realize that this, small liberal arts college in Illinois, Illinois College, 900 students in central Illinois. Oh, I didn't even know that existed, but let me look into it. Let me see if that's going to fit into, my selection process. So don't just discard those, but do know that, that's a great way to expand your horizons with, there's over 3,000 colleges and universities in the United States. There's really no way for you to know what all of them are at the outset. So this is a really great way to expand your list and to start seeing what's out there. And so then really as we're starting to utilize the PSAT to kind of make an indicator of our test prep scores, what our test prep plan is going to be, is going to also, a factor that's going to come into that is what are the SAT requirements for the schools that you're interested in. Again, if you're looking at a Harvard or a Yale or something along those lines, like you're going to need a 1600 as well as a plethora of other things with your grades and extracurriculars, which we don't have time to get into that tonight. But you're going to need a 1600 on your SATs. If you're taking if you take the PSAT and you get a 900 or 1000 or even 1200, how likely, so you get to ask this question, how likely is it that you are going to, one, be able to raise your score significantly to be able to make that 1600, and two, what are the other pieces? What are the other holistic pieces? Your resume, your extracurriculars, your GPA, the level of classes that you have taken, the hard level that difficulty level is the word that I was looking for. So thinking about those things. So you can start doing that type of research, and you want to compare what your current, what your PSAT score is. Yes, you're going to go and take the SAT, and that's going to potentially be a different score, absolutely. But you need to evaluate, how does that practice affect your possibility of admittance? It's really, how will that practice help you raise your score to what you need it to be, that's going to match the average or be above the average of your top schools? With practice, there's kind of three different paths here. With practice, it'll help me, and I really should do well. I only need to raise it, 100 or 200 points at the most, maybe even only 50. I'm going to need a lot of practice, but I think I can do it, and I think it's going to be worth it. Or, practicing may be helpful, and I may need to start reevaluating my list. We are certainly not saying to anyone, give up on your dreams based on this one test, nothing is possible. Absolutely not. But if we are using the PSAT as an indicator, all that this last one about practicing may help, and I need to reevaluate my list, means to me, the way that I am delivering this is, okay, maybe I'm going to look at, do I have the money for and the time for these pay for service programs, because I think that I'm going to be able to raise my scores and I'm committed to it, and I'm going to keep all of my original schools on my list, but I'm going to add some others, maybe based off of those ones that are recruiting, that are sending materials. So we're really adding to that list. I'm not saying take them off indefinitely, but we're just reevaluating and adding to that list. So some of the ways that you can look at where those average SAT scores are, you can do a quick Google search or a web search and say, what is the average SAT score for Ball State University? What's the average SAT score for Stanford? That type of thing. And it's going to bring you links typically to this website is Prep Scholar. It's prepscholar.com is the resource. And there's a lot of information, average GPA, average cost, a lot of demographic information is also here. But it's really got that SAT piece. Please work with your coach. If you want to help, if you need some help in identifying schools that match your interest as well as your average score, talk with your coach. How do I go about this? How do I expand my list? How do I reevaluate it? What does that mean for me? And your coach will have an honest conversation with you about what next steps could be for you. And remember, you do not want to take that test more than 3 times. So whatever you can do to avoid that, if it's additional test prep, if it's a reevaluating, which is really why it's important to start looking at those dates, because you don't want test on top of test on top of test, because that doesn't give you a lot of time to evaluate how well you did and what areas you need to work on. So good news is we've come to the end of this kind of rapid fire version of our information on what to do with those PSAT scores. This is us. If you have any questions, this is how to get a hold of us. So what I am going to do really quickly is jump out. Okay, I did that. If anyone has any questions, this is the time. Oh, thank you for putting that in there, Amy. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat, or there's really only a few of us on here, so if you want to unmute yourself and ask, that would be super helpful. Or my other fellow coaches, if there's anything that you want to add to my rapid fire speech here tonight, I'm sure people would love to hear it. So.
Guys, hey, this is Bill. First of all, Megan, thank you so much. That was excellent. I learned a lot. And I want to thank my 2 students, Michaela and Swar, for being on the webinar this evening. I appreciate that a lot. And I hope the 2 of you got some good information as well. Fortunately, you're both sophomores, so this isn't something that you have to be too concerned or stressed about right now, but I'm really glad that you have gotten on the call to kind of learn what you need to be doing and what you need to think about in the future. So thanks for being on.
This is Coach Amy. I'm going to throw out, when Megan was talking about the math section of the PSAT and the math section of the SAT, the math section of the actual SAT has between 3 and 5 calculus questions on it. most juniors don't take calculus. An average junior class is Algebra 2, or perhaps trig, depending on how their school structures it. So knowing that ahead of time, if you're a student who isn't at the calculus level by your junior year or haven't taken pre-calc, aren't taking pre-calc in your junior year, those are the types of questions on the SAT that no matter how much you prep for them, you're not going to learn that material. Calculus is too involved for you to know how to solve a calculus problem on the SAT. But if you really focus on all your basics up to that, that's only 3 to 5 questions. So your score, you can still score a 720, even just guessing on those questions. So don't think, oh, I can't do well on the SAT because I don't have that math, but know that that's there. And that's kind of what I always like to warn students. I'm like, if you haven't had the calculus, you're not going to be able to do the calculus part of the SAT. And that's okay. No matter how much you prep, that you're just not going to know it. So that kind of is what we were talking about with that.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, here's the thing. I took every drop of knowledge from Coach Amy and just put it into pretty slides. So this was really her knowledge that was out there. So I got to learn a lot in doing this presentation as well. Well, if there aren't any other questions, we can go ahead and wrap up. If there are any questions, please let us know. This is being recorded, so it will be available for our coaches to be able to send out to their students who weren't able to join us tonight. And we'll also be repeating this for any coach who wants to join me, but no one has to. I will be repeating this webinar at 7:30 Mountain Time this evening as well. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to talking with you soon. Have a great night.
Thanks, Megan. Great job.
Thanks. Bye-bye.